Alright, hey guys. I want to talk today about adrenal dysfunction. A little hobby of mine is just to basically look up research articles and research a subject until I basically understand it. And recently I've been looking up a lot to do with the adrenals, so I'm gonna kind of go through kind of like what research I've found, research articles and kind of like YouTube videos, basically on adrenal dysfunction. Kind of like why I'm interested in this is because it seems like there's so many health conditions related to fatigue. This is what I experienced when I had Lyme disease and I crashed. And since it's very subjective, doctors can't measure it. When I went to the doctor, they basically would tell me, oh, you'll eventually feel better. But I was so fatigued, I couldn't get out of bed. And people are like, well, what is your main symptom? Fatigue was my main symptom. And I was in bed for a good 5 months without being able to stand up. Fatigue is basically related to numerous health conditions. You have autoimmune disease, you have chronic fatigue, you have thyroid disorders, and basically just your everyday exhaustion that most people face, and most people have to stimulate themselves with caffeine, and they crash during the day, so it's sugar, and then they have insomnia at night and they can't sleep, and then like the whole process starts all over again. So that's just the daily exhaustion. Before I was talking about the actual conditions related to fatigue that might interfere with functions of daily living. Those would be the autoimmune and thyroid and chronic fatigue. We have accepted as a whole of society that this loss of energy on a daily basis is just something that is normal, when in fact it is very abnormal. We are meant to grow and thrive as a society, not crash and need and become reliant on all these stimulants to basically keep us going. Stimulants in the form of exercise, caffeine, stimulants in the form of, sugar isn't really a stimulant, but it gives you energy. So, energy drinks, all these things we are basically reliant on. And then at night, we're so hyperstimulated that we suppress ourselves with alcohol to be able to fall asleep. This is extremely, extremely damaging cycle that we go through every day. The more alcohol we drink at night, and then we wake up and we're super fatigued when we wake up because we don't get deep sleep with alcohol, and then we need the stimulation again. So a lot of this fatigue and problem, it is related to adrenal dysfunction. So I'm going to talk about why the adrenal glands are related to fatigue to start out with. We have something that the adrenal glands release called cortisol, and it's a long-acting hormone that is supposed to be highest in the morning when we wake up and then kind of like slowly go down over a day. And by the middle of the day, sometimes it will go up and down a little bit, but for the most part, it's going to start at the top when you wake up and then slowly go down. So then by evening time, cortisol is at its lowest, melatonin's higher, melatonin's been building for a couple hours, and that allows you to fall asleep easier and get this nice, good, deep sleep. Well, in today's society, that does not work out that way. So our adrenal glands get taxed through, heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate, mineral deficiency, nutrient deficiencies, and also sleep disorders. And a lot of the sleep disruption is due to modern day lighting, not enough bright light during the day and not enough darkness at night. So we are a light and sleep deprived society. These imbalances in cortisol that are produced by all these things also contribute to imbalances in other hormones, because the adrenal glands also release other hormones other than just strictly cortisol. So they also release estrogen, they also release testosterone, the thyroid hormone, that kind of goes hand in hand with cortisol dysfunction. So more and more in today's society, we're seeing, estrogen dominance, kind of like increasing PMS symptoms with women. We're seeing kind of like this hypothyroid epidemic sort of thing. Everybody has hypothyroid. We're seeing immune system dysfunctions. Cortisol also helps regulate the immune system, and this cortisol disruption can impair all these different hormones and all these different factors that contribute to keeping your body in balance. So when cortisol is out of balance, the rest of your hormones in your body are out of balance. It can create a lot of havoc in the body. I also wanted to talk about Dr. Walsh. Dr. Walsh is an ND, and he had a very interesting video that talked about functional adrenal insufficiency. So functional adrenal insufficiency is basically where the mitochondria in the adrenals, it cannot produce enough cortisol. There is basically an enzyme that helps convert cholesterol into cortisol, and that kind of gets blocked. This is basically almost a suppression of cortisol rather than the adrenals being absolutely burned out. So I'm going to link a video down below. So I thought, like, why don't I look up mitochondrial dysfunction and see what I can find that kind of causes mitochondrial dysfunction. And I've kind of looked up that certain medications, and I am providing a link down below to a list of medications that actually cause mitochondrial dysfunction that can contribute to the suppression of cortisol. Aspirin, acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, metformin, which helps regulate blood glucose levels. There's a couple more too. You can actually go check it out. And then I also found a research article that I'm going to link below that shows that sleep pathology, specifically sleep apnea, is linked to mitochondrial dysfunction, which I thought was extremely interesting. So I wonder if that also just applies to insomnia and lack of sleep, not just sleep apnea. It's a smaller study, but it's a really interesting one, so check that one out. I found that oxidative stress can contribute to mitochondrial dysfunction. You can get oxidative stress by actually overburdening the adrenal glands. So oxidative stress is basically caused by a lack of antioxidants in the diet. Oxidative stress is essentially free radicals that kind of cause damage in the body. So in order to negate that oxidative stress and the kind of like the extra electron in the body that's going to like go around and do damage, it needs an antioxidant to let it borrow an electron and make it a little bit more stable. So a lot of vegetable intake would help with oxidative stress because the antioxidants in the vegetables counteract this oxidative stress. Also, what causes oxidative stress is kind of these rancid oils. I'm also going to link a paper by Chris Kresser down below that explains that whole process. The other thing that limits this enzyme to convert cholesterol into cortisol is toxins. Surprise, surprise. Thallium is a huge one. There's an article, I'm going to link this article below. Contamination with heavy metals is considered a major environmental issue as a threat to human health. Thallium-based compounds exhibit a high tendency to accumulate in the environment. It's considered toxic for humans and animals, organisms, and plants. Human exposure to thallium is mainly associated with the consumption of contaminated food or drinking water. Thallium rapidly enters the bloodstream and is transported across the whole organism. In consequence, the functioning of several relevant enzymes, remember how we're talking about the enzyme that converts cholesterol to cortisol, could be included, just saying, is disrupted. Stomach and intestinal ulcers, alopecia, and polyneuropathy are considered a classic syndromes of thallium poisoning. Other symptoms include astral disorders, insomnia, paralysis, loss of body mass, internal bleeding. You know, I've personally had a history of sleep paralysis and some out-of-body experiences. Resulting air pollution, thallium ash, allows thallium contaminations to spread across wide distances and enter other environmental niches as well as organisms. Such compounds may also leak into underground water streams and increase the risk of chronic exposure. So it could be in the water. If you're not drinking quality bottled spring water, you could be at risk for this. On the other hand, high concentrations of thallium in shallow soil also pose notable threats due to possible uptake by plant roots and storage in plant biomass. Thallium may enter the food chain and accumulate in living organisms, causing severe disorders and ultimately becoming fatal. In order to prevent thallium poisoning, its content must not exceed the environmentally safe limits. The presence of contaminants comprising thallium in air results in absorption by plants. Increased content of thallium in the human body mainly results from consumption of contaminated food, vegetables, fish, meat-based products. In case of exposure to airborne contamination, what they call fly ash, thallium may also enter the human body by the lungs. High thallium concentrations may be found in green vegetables such as cabbage or kale. Thallium is present in the natural environment at low concentrations. Thallium enters the environment primarily as a result of coal burning and smelting. In the vicinity of contaminated areas, elevated concentrations of thallium were found in resources. This is an issue of major concern since thallium salts are now considered to be among the most toxic compounds known. Further studies are required in order to determine the potential sources of thalliums in order to limit the negative impact of such contaminants on the environment and human health. Living near hazardous waste sites containing thallium may result in considerable high exposures. It should also be emphasized that the effects of chronic exposure to low concentrations of thallium are currently unknown. These extremely low levels of thallium, we don't know the health consequences of that, and that is frightening if you ask me.